Everyone, and welcome to Bassman Studio. Now, this is the second part of a series in which I use one primary color. The last video was about yellow, where I painted a still life completely in yellow. In this one, I'm going to paint a seascape in blue. Now, blue is obviously a primary color. It's very beautiful. It's a cool color. Unknown in the ancient world, apparently the Greeks did not use blue on their palette, according to Pliny the Elder and other historians. It's a color that we take advantage of. We have certainly a lot of blues now in art stores, such as ultramarine blue and cobalt blue and Prussian blue, some of which have been invented fairly recently in the art world. I'm going to paint a seascape using primarily cobalt blue and ultramarine blue, which are just beautiful to use. So sit back and relax. Thank you for joining me and enjoy this new video from Bassman Studio. Here we are as I start the painting as usual. I start with burnt sienna and I start drawing in the horizon line. And just a few waves. No detail, of course, just keeping it very simple. Just to know where everything is placed. This is going to be a relatively simple composition. And then I could do all the details later and all the effects that I want to do. But I do want to place everything first. So remember, to start off very simple. You could start off drawing in pencil or charcoal. I prefer paint, what we call alla prima, and just going straight to the paint. Using an earth color like burnt sienna, you could use raw umber as well. Any earth color would do. And again, rudimentarily just like putting in like shapes. Just so I know where to put everything. And I'm going to start with the beautiful blue sky using cobalt blue and titanium white and just a tiny bit of yellow. Just give it a little power. Cobalt blue is one of my favorite blues actually. Just a beautiful blue. It's also very opaque. It just covers very well in oil paint. It's also a great favorite of the Impressionists. They loved using cobalt blue. So I'm just going to again block in using this beautiful blue as my sky. So again, this is going to be a primarily blue painting. But of course I may be cheating a little bit. I am using a little yellow to change the color, just a tiny bit. It's always good to know how much moderation to put in a pigment. You don't want to use, of course, too much yellow or else you'll have a green sky. So you use just a little bit of yellow to give it a bit of luminosity. And I'm almost done covering the sky part. So I'm working back to front, which is the usual way just to push things forward. It's a great way to start adding dimension to your work, especially a landscape. And again, just covering as much as I can, but still keeping it relatively simple with no detail. And smoothing it out just slightly, but not getting carried away at this point. And now I can start adding the water, again keeping it simple. To get this blue color added, just a tiny bit of red. Again, I could be cheating a little bit, but I'm still keeping it relatively blue, although I knew that this was a darker blue, of course, than the sky, so I had to darken it somehow. And I'm just blocking in, just covering a large area before I add any waves or anything of that nature. Things are just put in very simply. And I'm just literally pushing the paint around the canvas while it's still wet. Now, what I'm going to show you is aerial perspective. Now, aerial perspective is perspective of distance, such as waves getting smaller as they go further into horizon line. And that's going to give our painting a very dramatic effect and the illusion of space. So I'm going to use the same beautiful cobalt blue that I've been using for the waves. I love cobalt blue. It was invented in the 19th century, a big favorite of the Impressionists. And it's just a beautiful blue to use, one of my favorites. It's very opaque, and I use it for a lot for skies, etc. It has great covering power in oil, and it's just a beautiful color. So I will continue with our seascape and with the waves. Now I'm starting to add the waves, and you can see this is slightly darker. Added a little, again, more red and a bit of black as well to create this very dark wave. And as I said, in terms of aerial perspective, this is going to go smaller as it goes closer to the distance. It's going to get also lighter as it gets closer to the distance. That's just what happens when things get further away. But the first waves in the foreground are going to be very powerful, very large, and darker. And again, very loosely just putting in waves wherever I see them. Still using a big brush. I haven't switched brushes yet. At this point, I could keep using the same brush just to block in and put in large areas of paint. When I get to the smaller waves is when I'll switch brushes. But right now, this is perfectly fine to use a large brush to move paint around and to get a general idea of where I want to put everything. And you can see it's starting to take shape, slowly. It's good to have patience when you're painting. Things don't happen immediately, you have to build up until you see it working. But again, results aren't going to come immediately. Now I could switch to a smaller brush where I add the smaller waves because they're further away in distance. Again, this is aerial perspective. Things are going to get smaller, lighter as they get further away toward the horizon line. And that goes for any landscape, not just the seascape, anything in nature, basically. As opposed to linear perspective, this is a perspective of distance. Linear perspective deals with line, also distance, of course, but this deals primarily with things getting smaller as they get further away and lighter. And I'm just putting in the waves wherever I see them. Again, I could embellish later. And you can see we're starting to get a feeling of distance. I'm just going back and I am darkening the waves in the foreground just to give them more power. Because what I want is that feeling of three-dimensionality in a painting. And the way to achieve that is to make the foreground much more powerful than the middle ground and the background, which will happen in nature. And I'm just going around and I am, with a round brush, just darkening areas of the painting. Which I think is just very fun to do. And again, using blue, just a little black, a little red, just to give it a bit more contrast. And I'm going to mix a little bit of titanium white with a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow in moderation. With experience, you start knowing exactly how much paint to put. You never want to put too much, you just want to put a little bit. And I'm going to use this color just to give a little bit of light hitting the waves. So again, the painting is primarily blue at this point, but there is a variation of slight non-blue color, such as the yellow, just to give it a bit of luminosity. And I'm using this fairly opaquely, so it sits on the canvas. Again, with experience, you start to know exactly how much paint to use and when. And you do it slowly. Patience is something you learn as well, as I said before. Again, nothing happens immediately. You have to work on it for a little while until you see the results that you want to see. And I'm just putting a little bit of light hitting the waves. And now again with a very small round brush, just putting little details in the waves. And again, this is wet on wet. So the paint is still wet underneath. I'm just moving the paint around basically at this point. To me, one of the most enjoyable parts of painting is when you start adding the little finishing touches to a painting. And you could add what I call the special effects, like the small little darks and lights. They give it power. And then going back again with a round brush and just delineating waves, making lines a little sharper. Fixing the drawing a bit. You could do this with a round brush. Go back and you just kind of clean. I call cleaning up, really. You're just kind of making things sharper or even eliminating things you don't want. At this point, you could still do that. If I wanted to take a wave out, for instance, I could do that right now. And I could also blend. And you can see it's helping push the waves again closer to the foreground or further away, as I wish. And again, this is wet on wet. You can see the paint underneath is still wet. So it's basically you're just moving paint around as you go around your painting. And again, I could use the white, the so-called white with a little yellow, just to give it a little bit of dimension. And this just sits on the painting. It's just like more opaque, and it just kind of rests on the painting a little bit. Which again is very enjoyable to put as one of the last details in the painting, like the highlights. And now I'm going to work on the cloud, so I'm adding a little bit of titanium white with cadmium yellow and a little bit of blue. Again, I've only used one blue in this painting, which is cobalt blue. But I'm also a very big fan of ultramarine blue, which is just a beautiful blue to use. There's so many beautiful blues you can use. It's almost overwhelming what you find in art stores in terms of blues. But ultramarine blue is a standard for a lot of artists to use. It's a beautiful reddish blue color. Originally, it was lapis lazuli, but that's extremely expensive. So the manufacturer of paint made ultramarine. And here we have our finished seascape. Well, thank you for watching my latest video on YouTube, where I paint with one primary color. So the next video will be a red painting, which is another primary color. So I haven't chosen the theme yet for that painting, but it should be very interesting. And remember, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing to see more video coming very soon from Bassman Studio. If you have, thank you very much for supporting this channel. Remember, any questions or comments you may have, please leave them in the comment section. I'd be glad to answer any questions regarding this video or any video that I've done on my channel. Remember, go out there, do some great work. Don't let fear stop you. And I'll see you next time on Bassman Studio. Have an amazing and creative day, everyone.